Thanks for listening today. This is the RX Daily Dose. Today's episode is being recorded on Friday, September 27th, and I'm your host, Ian Parnagoni. We update this podcast every week for healthcare providers, medical professionals, and anyone who has an interest in drug updates. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on all of your favorite podcast platforms and social media, including iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and Instagram. All links can be found in the show notes below. Let's get right into it with updates from the FDA. The big one this week happened on Friday, September 20th. Novo Nordisk, the maker of multiple diabetes products on the market already, announced FDA approval of the first glucagon-like peptide-1 receptor agonist, that's GLP-1 for short, in an oral form. All GLP-1s on the market prior to Friday were injectable and either indicated for weekly or daily dosing for patients with type 2 diabetes. This new daily oral drug, semaglutide, goes by brand name Rybelsus and has great data to back it up versus placebo and in head-to-head studies with its major competitors in the same class. Rybelsus in placebo studies showed up to 1.5% reduction in hemoglobin A1C. That's a standard measure of blood glucose, compared to 0.1% for placebo. And 44% of patients on Rybelsus lost at least 5% of their body weight, compared to 16% in the placebo arm. The approval from the FDA and the results are from 10 clinical trials, all from the Pioneer study, which enrolled almost 10,000 participants and included head-to-head studies of Rybelsus versus sitagliptin, empagliflozin, and liraglutide. In those head-to-head trials, Rybelsus showed a greater reduction in hemoglobin A1C levels over the course of the studies. The drug name semaglutide might be known to many of you already. It's also available in injectable form from Novo and goes by the brand name Ozempic and dosed weekly. For those with type 2 diabetes, GLP-1 products mimic natural body hormones and, to put it simply, helps the pancreas produce more insulin when needed. Novo also announced that Rybelsus will be priced equally among the injectable products within the same class, leaving it up to the PBMs to work with Novo and negotiate discounts. We'll definitely see some shifts in PBM formularies coming probably on January 1st with this product, given its positive clinical profile and cost-effectiveness research that came from Novo with it as well. Rybelsus tablets are available in 7 mg or 14 mg doses and should be taken daily on an empty stomach when you first wake up with a small amount of water. The package insert is actually going to say less than 4 ounces of water. After 30 minutes, you can go about normal eating and drinking. It's approved for those 18 years of age or older with type 2 diabetes that, along with diet and exercise, may improve blood sugar. The prescribing information for Rybelsus also includes a boxed warning to advise healthcare professionals and patients about the potential increased risk of thyroid C-cell tumors, and that Rybelsus is not recommended as the first choice of medicine for treating diabetes. Patients who have ever had medullary thyroid carcinoma or who have a family member who has ever had medullary thyroid carcinoma are advised not to use Rybelsus. Additionally, patients who have ever had an endocrine system condition called multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome type 2 are advised not to use Rybelsus. Rybelsus is not for use in patients with type 1 diabetes and people with diabetic ketoacidosis. The FDA also approved expanded indications for 2 HIV medications, doravirine going by brand name Perfeltro in combination with other antiretroviral agents, and the combination product doravirine lamivudine tenofovir going by brand name Delstrigo as a complete regimen for adult patients with HIV-1 infection who are virologically suppressed on a stable antiretroviral regimen with no history of treatment failure and no known substitutions linked with resistance to Pifeltro or the individual components of Delstrigo. The FDA approved both drugs for patients with HIV-1. The approval of Pifeltro and Delstrigo were based on data from DRIVE-SHIFT Phase 3 randomized, multi-center, and open-label trial that assessed switch to Delstrigo in virologically suppressed patients on a baseline regimen for at least 6 months prior to trial entry, and no history of virologic failure. The baseline regimen here is composed of 2 nucleoside reverse transcriptase inhibitors, also known as NRTIs, in combination with a protease inhibitor, plus either ritonavir or cobicistat, or elvitegravir plus cobicistat, or an NNRTI for at least 6 months before trial entry. The FDA this week also approved a new monkeypox and smallpox vaccine for use in adults who are over the age of 18 and who are at risk for either virus. The vaccine, called Jynneos, it's the first non-replicating smallpox vaccine on the market. It does not actually contain the viruses for smallpox and monkeypox. It's made from a modified form of a virus that is closely related but less harmful. That's the vaccinia virus, and actually protects against both. This virus does not cause the disease in humans and is non-replicating, meaning it cannot reproduce in human cells. Jynneos will be placed in the Strategic National Stockpile. That's the nation's largest supply of vaccines and medical supplies in case of a health emergency. Smallpox was certified eradicated by the World Health Organization in 1980, and vaccination of the American public actually stopped in 1972. Although naturally occurring smallpox is no longer a threat, the vaccine can be used in those as a preparedness measure and stored in the national stockpile as a medical countermeasure. And in an update to our Zantac and potential for NDMA exposure topic from last week, Sandoz, the generic division of Novartis, originally suspended distribution of generic Zantac last week. However, now they are recalling them from the U.S. market after determining they contain a suspected carcinogen known as NDMA. This is likely just the first of a series of recalls of ranitidine coming, just as we saw with blood pressure medications that are still ongoing. Sandoz is voluntarily recalling all lots of prescription 150 mg and 300 mg ranitidine. And just to be clear, as of right now, only Sandoz has recalled their product. There are many generics still on the market, and brand name Zantac, made by Sanofi, is also still available for now. And in one final update with the ranitidine, NDMA, Zantac issue going on, the US FDA just on Thursday alerted healthcare professionals and patients to a voluntary recall of over-the-counter ranitidine tablets, that's 75 milligrams and 150 milligrams. Those are products that are labeled by Walgreens, Walmart, Rite Aid, and manufactured by Apotex Corp. Consumers taking OTC ranitidine may consider using other OTC products approved for their condition. And finally today, to close out our series on flu season, I wanted to provide some insight into what those in the community are experiencing this year so far, and some common myths about the flu vaccine that we often hear from patients. I had the privilege and opportunity to interview my good friend Dr. Kathy Bender for some insight into flu season. Hope you enjoy the interview. Since I haven't worked retail in a while, I wanted to get someone on here who has a wealth of experience in the community and is also an expert in putting together flu clinics. And I thought, who better than my friend, Dr. Kathy Bender? Kathy, hi, hello, and welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Great. How are you doing, Ian?
I'm good, thanks. I'm excited to have you here with us today. To start, for the people listening, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and some of your experiences with clinical programs and flu clinics?
Sure. So I have been a licensed pharmacist since 2008, around the same time as you, I would think. And I've actually been working retail the whole time. I've been working for the same company, and we started immunizing back in, I want to say 2009 or 2010. And it's been going strong ever since. The program grows every year. We are out in the community, out at businesses doing flu clinics. And it's an exciting addition to our practice. I also want to apologize because I have a 10-month-old child who is wandering around helping me with this right now, and you may hear some of her in the background. So
I don't think anyone listening has a problem with your 10-month-old. If they do, they can take it up with me.
Great.
In previous podcasts, we've talked about why it's important to get immunized and some of the vaccines that are out there. In your pharmacy, what are the vaccines that you carry?
Sure. So we have a handful of them. Obviously, we don't carry them all. It's not really necessary, as they're all the CDC doesn't prefer one over the other as long as it's age appropriate. In my location, we can vaccinate ages 9 and up. So I guess I know that might be awful, but I'm not terribly familiar with the lower age range of the vaccines we carry. But all of them outside of the ones that are designated for 65 and over are considered equal. So I have the Flucelvax. We've had afluria in the past. I don't think that we have it this year. It's mostly the Flucelvax is what we're giving to ages 9 through 65. And then we have both Fluad and Fluzone HD for our senior citizens, which are both trivalent vaccines.
You mentioned that you only immunize up to age 9. Is that something that varies by state law or by pharmacy, or how does that work?
It's a combination of both. There is state law involved in it. And then we operate as a retail pharmacy. It's different, and again, state to state and pharmacy to pharmacy. But we operate under a standing order, so we have a physician that authorizes us to vaccinate within certain guidelines, which basically reflect CDC guidelines. But they determine ages 9 and up. I believe that's Massachusetts law. So.
I know in Rhode Island it's basically the same thing, so it's by which pharmacy you work at, the standing order that's created.
Yeah, so in Maine, where I'm also licensed to vaccinate, we don't need a standing order as long as the CDC, according to the state, we don't need a standing order as long as it's a CDC-approved vaccine and they meet all of the criteria. We can administer it. My company requires a standing order and for us to follow that still, but in general, in the state of Maine, it's not required. So
same thing in Rhode Island. Pharmacists can give all immunizations, but it's the company that is requiring which one and which age ranges. So when you actually see someone in the pharmacy, how do you know what vaccine to give them? Do you just pick one out of the fridge, or how do you know which vaccine is for who?
Sure. So some of the main screening criteria are any history of allergic reaction, and even then, that's not really a preclusion to getting a vaccine unless it's severe. Age is the main factor that we look at. Our senior citizens, adults age 65 and up, should get either the Fluzone high dose or the Fluad vaccine, which helps them to build a better immunity against the flu each year.
So for those that are coming into your store now, have you seen a big influx now versus what you're thinking about later October? When's the best time to get a flu shot? Is there any specific time to get it and anything that you recommend?
So they're available beginning in August, and if the only time you're going to see your doctor is in August, then you should get your flu shot in August if you have no other access to vaccination. However, they do recommend any time before the end of October. It does take 2 weeks for your body to really build up that full immunity, and flu season is pretty unpredictable, so you want to make sure you have full immunity by the time it by the time it gets going.
You know, I've worked retail before, and I mean, you have much more experience in retail than I do. But whenever I saw patients, they used to come in with some pretty crazy questions sometimes about the flu and comments about the vaccine that were not necessarily true. Most people listening here are healthcare providers, but I thought it might be fun to go over some of these things. First one is, can you get the flu from a flu shot? And how do you explain that to a patient?
So it's no is the answer. You cannot get the flu from a flu shot. That's probably the most common question. I know it's the most common question I get. I don't know about every other pharmacist, but people say, yeah, but it makes me sick or I get sick. And while it is still possible to get the flu if you've gotten the flu shot, and like I said, it does take 2 weeks for your body to build up that full immunity. So if you've been exposed to the flu before then, you could still get the flu in that 2 week period, and even after if it's not a covered strain of the virus. People don't want to hear it. You explain to them it's a dead vaccine. There is absolutely no way for that for the antigens essentially that are in the vaccine to cause an influenza infection. And sometimes people will listen and they'll understand that, and other times they don't want to hear it. They are also, well, I get sick from it. I may not get the flu, but it makes me sick. They actually have done studies and giving the influenza virus to half the people and just a saline injection to the other half the people, and they found that the influenza report was the general unwell feeling for the next few days was the same between the two groups. So while, yes, you may feel unwell, it's likely not the vaccine itself that's causing it. So
that's a really great counseling point to tell patients when you're talking to them about the flu shot. That's great to know.
Yeah.
Excellent. I've also heard a lot of people say, I'm healthy, I don't need it, I'm in good shape, good condition, I have great scores on my cholesterol, I wash my hands, I'm not near sick people, all the above. How do you explain to people that even though you're healthy, you still need protection?
Sure. So I try to appeal to their humanity. For instance, when you have a baby that's under 6 months old, they can't get a flu vaccine, and the flu can be deadly for those kind of people. Even senior citizens, the reason we give them the higher dose vaccines is because they're more susceptible to adverse effects, and they get the flu much more easy than because they have lower immunity than the rest of the population. So if we can avoid spreading the flu virus, I mean, even if you or I get the flu, you're right. Likely we're not going to get that sick. You or I are not going to end up in the ICU because we got the flu. But what we may do is transmit it to someone we love or someone we don't even know, and that could land them in the ICU. And that's just, I mean, it's just not fair, is it? I don't know. I don't think it's fair. So.
That's a really great point, and I completely agree with you. For most people, the flu is going to come and go pretty quickly, and they'll be out of commission and out of work for a short time frame. But for those that are immune compromised or the elderly or children under 5 is what I think the CDC says as more susceptible to influenza. It's one of those things where you don't just get immunized for yourself, but for others.
You're a good neighbor if you get your flu shot.
That's right. The other thing was, and I'm not sure in your pharmacy, but can you immunize to pregnant women?
Yes, yeah, we absolutely are. And pregnant women are some of the people that absolutely should get flu vaccines because not only are they getting it for themselves, but they're getting it for that baby. They are passing that immunity that they're generating onto that unborn child, and that's huge. I mean, that's one less thing that baby has to sort out when it reaches the world. Mm-hmm. So the CDC just put out a report saying that there is absolutely no reason why pregnant women need to go to their healthcare provider to get the vaccine, and anyone capable of administering a flu vaccine should be able to administer it to a pregnant woman. So, yeah, absolutely, and we should be giving it because it's it's a critical population that needs to get it. So,
Before we close here, what's the one thing you want to let our audience know about with the flu vaccine this year?
I think my biggest, the biggest thing I like to tell people is even if it's especially, most people know they need to come in and get it, but for the people that are reluctant, it's not about you, it's about everybody else. Even if you're not concerned with your own health, you're doing the whole country a favor by getting your flu shot. You're keeping people out of the ICU, out of the hospital, and you're potentially saving lives, and that's a big deal.
So, moral of the story is be a patriot, get a flu shot.
Yeah.
Perfect. That's good. I think that's a good place to leave this, Kathy. I'll let you go. But thank you so much for spending time with us today. Again, this is Dr. Kathy Bender, and I'll be sure to put up her contact info for everyone to reach out to her if you have any questions.
Thanks, Ian. It was great to talk to you.
And that's all I have for this week. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I'll include all links and resources in the show notes below, so please go back and check those out too. Please connect with me on any of your social media platforms and give me feedback on what you listened to today. I'd love to know what you thought about the episode. And as always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. And thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Music by Joseph McDade.